Hey guys, welcome back. So today we're out the range with a brand new rifle from HK, and this is something that's really exciting to us. We have been following the MR556/HK416, the civilian version known as the MR556, for quite some time. And it's been the basis for guns that we've converted into clones of 416s in the past, using some Brown Elves parts and things like that. But finally, HK stepped up and gave us a rifle that is really, really close to the current generation of the 416 that's being out there all over the world. All right, so here I have right now my original Gen 1 first year production MR556A1, and I've had this gun literally since HK introduced them many years ago. And we're going to start off shooting this, and then we're going to take a look at the new A4, which I have here, and we're going to do a detailed breakdown of all the parts that are either the same as the original A1 or are different with the A4. So stick around for that. I think you'll find it interesting. But let's start off shooting this bad boy that should still be zeroed because it's been zeroed for like a decade now. All right, let's do some shooting with the A4 because this thing is actually really cool, just expensive. A lot of folks ask me, how can I get involved in the firearms business in that particular community? And one of the best ways to do that is to become a gunsmith. Every gunsmith I know is just overbooked with work. It's a very good living. And so if you would like to become a gunsmith, you need to go to a gunsmithing school or become an apprentice for an existing gunsmith. But Modern Gun School is an accredited college that also works with veterans in the GI Bill, where you can go and get a degree from accredited college in gunsmithing and then go out and start your own gunsmithing business, which I think is a really great option. Again, throughout my entire life, gunsmiths have always been able to earn a really good living, assuming they have a really strong work ethic. So please check out Modern Gun School. I do have a link in the video description below. All right, guys, here it is, the A4. We're gonna do some shooting with it here. Now, the interesting thing about the MR556/HK416 is that it has this lore about it. Many people consider it to be the most reliable M16 type rifle anywhere in the world, more so than the direct gas impingement guns that we love here in the United States. People for the longest time loved gas pistons, and this thing is winning military and law enforcement contracts the world over. You know, France is giving up the FAMAS in favor of these. The Germans are going to these, getting rid of their G36s. They're just all over the place. And so it is a very, very popular rifle. And it's HK, and there's a lot of testing that's gone into it, and it's definitely a reliable rifle. But for the longest time, Americans have wanted something that wasn't just super civilian like the MR556A1. They wanted a closer replica to the actual HK416, and that's what the A4 promises. One of the first things I noticed when I took it out of the box is it is noticeably lighter than the A1. Now, it's still not a lightweight rifle. This thing tips the scales over 7.5 pounds, but it's lighter by almost a pound, right at a pound, when we put this on the scale next to the A1. So they've really done a pretty good diet with the A4. Barrel profile, changes in the receivers and differences in the stocks, things like that. They've shaved that weight down, and you will notice it when you pick it up, especially if you're used to the A1. The handling of the rifle is very nice. The controls are all ambi, and so that's something that a lot of folks have wanted to do. I know some folks are modifying A1s, cutting them up, putting PDQ levers in there to get ambi controls and stuff that the A4 now has. And so the only thing that people aren't going to like about this, I suspect, is the really, really high price. So these things are like $3,500 or something. They're not inexpensive. This one came into copper. I saw it on the wall. I did some horse trading. I traded a couple of different rifles into the shop just so I could get this thing out to the range, do some shooting with it, because I really found this to be interesting. Because again, I've been looking for a 416. I even went so far as to build clones back in the day. And yeah, no longer necessary. It's just that really, really high price. So let's take a look at some of the features. We'll go over the ambi features, and then later in the video, we're gonna tear this thing down. We're gonna tear the A1 down and compare all the parts and show you what works between the two rifles, what's different, what's new, all that cool stuff. But let's do a little shooting with it. Now, when I opened up the video, I shot the A1, and when I fired the A1, notice where the brass was going, okay? It was going more forward towards maybe the 2 o'clock position. Watch how the A4 on its standard gas setting, because this has a normal setting and a suppressed setting, all right? This is its normal gas setting. On normal, Watch where this ejection pattern goes. Throwing them straight out to 3 o'clock, precisely where it's supposed to be throwing them. So that's evidence that this isn't as heavily gassed as the A1. Now, Jason brought something up that I want to give a try here really quick because I don't know, I haven't tried it yet. Of course, today we will be shooting some Federal ammunition. This is Federal 223. They supplied the ammunition free of charge to the channel. Been shooting Federal ammunition since I was a kid. Great people, great company, and I love the ammo. Very consistent. This is the same ammo we've been doing in our BCM burn down test, and it's never failed. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 10 rounds in here real quick. I think that's 10. Go ahead and switch that over to the suppress setting. We'll just see if it cycles. Now, keep in mind, this is 223 pressure stuff. This is not M193 or M855. This is running at slightly lower pressures. It's just range ammo. So let's see if it cycles. No, I could tell right there on my shoulder, I could just tell the bolt carrier didn't come back. So you can see that it almost stovepiped, but it malfunctioned. And that's to be expected. This is not a fault of the gun. So you can definitely tell there's a difference between the gas settings. But what's really nice is that when I do shoot this rifle, this is one of the smoothest gas piston ARs I've ever fired. I mean, this thing is such a pussycat. And I think it's got the gassing just so right on this thing. So check this out. Remember how I was talking about the 223 Federal being a little bit lower pressure than M193 ball? In this ammo can, we have some M193 ball. Let's put 5 rounds in the magazine. Set this back down on the ground. We always try to keep military ball out here. I'm going to go ahead and put it to the suppressor setting. So now it's on the suppress setting. Now remember, it wouldn't run the 223 stuff. Now it did not lock open, but it cycled, so it's just barely working on the suppressed setting with M193 ball. That's kind of cool because it's really shooting soft, either in the suppressor normal position. It's just a nice soft shooting rifle, which again, for a gas piston gun is really, really nice. For the first time, HK is offering the MR556 as a pistol with an 11-inch barrel. In the past, the A1 was only offered as a 16.5-inch barreled rifle, as we have with this particular rifle. So that's cool. Also, all the updates that's been done to this, they've also moved those updates over to the MR762. So now the 308 is going to be getting the same update treatments, which is really interesting, and I hope one day to get my hands on one of those rifles as well. So, oops. Check out the recoil impulse on this bad boy. It shoots so smooth. I really, really like how it fires. Yeah. Noticeably improved over the MR556A1 in terms of the recoil impulse. It seems like they've got that gas system dialed in almost perfectly. All right, so just really, really quick, just basic operation of the gun. So the stock really hasn't changed much in terms of function from the earlier versions. There are differences. We'll go over those here later in the video, but you can adjust the stock. It has 6 different positions you can adjust it to. You will not be able to take the rear plate off anymore. There's no reason for that. We'll talk about that a bit later. So moving forward, we now have ambi charging handles, so you can charge the rifle from either side, where originally on the A1s, we only could charge it from one side. The latch was only working from one side. Still has the A2 style port buffer there, A2 style forward assist, but where things get a little bit different, polymer port cover, things get a little bit different, we have this little lever right here. This is very similar to the PDQ device, but you can push up on it, lock the bolt to the rear, and then when you want to load it, stick a magazine in, push down, And so you have that ambi bolt stop bolt release, okay? Magazine releases in the same spot. Over here we have an ambi mag release and an enlarged ping pong paddle. And you'll notice the fencing around all the different new levers. So there's fencing protecting them all so they can't accidentally be bumped. We also have new quarter turn selector lever and QD mounts out here on the handguards, M-lock, 16.5-inch barrel, 1-7 twist, all that good stuff. So basically the manual of arms is just like any AR-15. You're going to insert your magazine. You can now charge it from either side because of the ambi charging handle. And now we have quarter turn selector lever, and it's just very, very well laid out. When you want to drop that bolt again, just reach up there with the index finger of the firing hand. You can drop the bolt, or conversely, you can lock it open as well. I have the first generation MR556A1 completely stripped down, and then we have the new A4 completely stripped down, and we want to just take a quick look at the different components and see what we can see in terms of what changes have been introduced into the civilian version of the A4. So let's start off with the handguards. This is easy. This is the A4 handguard. Obviously, it's considerably different than the Gen 1, which has the old cheese grater style, and this has M-lock on it. Now, these both attach in the same way. As you can see the takedown screws on them, and you can actually interchange these between the two different rifles. They will fit. This will fit on the A4, and this will fit on the A1, and we actually did that as a little test. On the lower side, this is the recoil spring and buffer from the new one, the A4. This is the A1. And both of them have red paint. The red paint's just kind of worn off the A1, and you'll see it inside of the spring more. And it's just one of those features that wears off. But if you look at the face of the buffers, you can see they're slightly different. This one has a red dot in there. This has the spot where the dot would be. They both say HK. Now, we did weigh the buffers, but there's a 0.3 of an ounce difference between the two buffers. Now, is that intentional or is that just a variance? I don't know. All right, so we'll set the buffers aside. Try to keep the parts in their respective groups. Taking a look at the bolt carriers, here's the A4. Here's the A1, so the bolt carrier and bolt. Really, guys, aside from this white mark on the A4, the two are identical. You can drop them in either gun and they'll both work just fine. So nothing really seems to be any different. We did take the bolts out of the carriers. We did take the firing pins out. They have the springs on them, everything identical. And the parts will interchange. So from what we can tell, no difference between the bolt and carrier groups of the two different versions of the rifle. Here is the gas system from the A4, and this is the gas system from the A1. And we can swap them back and forth. They appear to be identical. All right, so no differences in the op rod, the pucks, the pistons, all that stuff seems to be pretty much the same. Set all this stuff aside here. Charging handles. A4, white dot. A1. So we have an ambi charging handle introduced into the A4. All right. Set that stuff aside. Let's take a look at the uppers. So I'll just start off. This is the A4 upper and just kind of work my way forward. So one of the first things that we noticed, and I'll have to show you some pictures of this, but on the rear lug where the rear pin goes through, there is an insert inside of here that the only thing we can come up with is it's some sort of a tensioner. And this is not present on the A1's upper. So that was an interesting note. If you take a look at the 1913 rail across the top, you'll see that there's more rail sections. So there's a little swoop that was originally on the A1. That's been taken away. The 1913 rails come back closer to the shooter's face. And then out here, there's a big flat spot where a T-section or a cross pin could not be used. That has been changed on the A4. It's now a continuous rail section that goes out onto the handguard. And you can, we've confirmed it, we put a scope on here, and a pin will go through there and it fits and attaches just fine. Another thing that we noticed is this is an insert into the upper. This is a steel insert into the aluminum upper. And this is where your gas piston, the op rod, will ride into the receiver. You'll notice on this one, it's pinned in place and there are no slots for it to be screwed in. If you take a look at the A1, you'll see that it's screwed in. There's flat slots cut into it and there is no pin holding it in place. So they did change that. In terms of the front lugs, identical, can't see any differences there. Port covers and all that stuff all appear to be the same. Moving out here, you can clearly see a difference in the profile of the barrels. Now, the barrel profile on the A1s would change over time, as would the handguards, but this is a very early Gen 1. I got this literally when HK introduced them, and this is the most current A4. I don't have every version in between, at least not out here with me, but you can get an idea of how the barrel profiles have changed. Now, this is a 16.5-inch barrel, just like the original. It's a 1-in-7 twist, and it is not chrome lined. Both barrels are the same in that regard, with the rifling and the twist rate and all that good stuff, and the lack of chrome lining. The barrel nuts, the same. And they'd have to be because the handguards will affix to both. Taking a look at the gas block, significant change here. So the first generation gas block versus the current generation. This is adjustable, has 2 positions. You have normal and suppressed mode. So this gun is designed to be run with a suppressor. And this can be adjusted through the handguard. It has a cutout in it that allows you to easily access the gas adjuster or gas regulator. And then coming out, we have the exact same A2 type muzzle devices, right? Birdcage muzzle devices. I can't say they're A2 because they have no flat on them. It's just a birdcage. So you'll see that it doesn't have the A2 style flat. So I was incorrect in calling it A2. And the thread pitch should be 1/2 x 28. I didn't confirm that though. All right, well, let's set these aside and take a look at the lowers. So here's the A1 and here's the A4. A lot of differences here, folks. So if we start off just looking at the butt stocks, you'll notice that this is a thinner profile stock. This one's much thicker. This one is one of the early ones that you can twist the rear piece off. You have your crayon holders in there. And then of course you have this little disassembly tool, which we'll talk about here in a moment. No longer required. So if you take a look at the new generation stock, much thinner, has a strap here for a strap sling to go through, just like the original. This one has strap mounts here. Those are absent from the A4. And there is no QD mount anywhere on the stock itself. If we take the stock off, both of these have the additional holes in the rear to vent water for over-the-beach type operations and stuff like that. So it can push more water out the rear of the buffer tube. Both of them have that. Moving forward, castle nuts. This has the extended castle nut on it. Adds rigidity to it. You can see the original A1's castle nut. You'll also notice on the A1, there's no QD plate. On the A4, we have a QD plate back here. So this is where you're going to put your rear QD sling. You'll notice the pistol grip on the A4 is hollow and there's no cap on it. If you take a look at the A1, it has the cap on it and a different style, different profile pistol grip. All right, so moving forward, this is probably one of the biggest changes. So on the earlier generations of the gun, you needed this tool to move your pins. They lock. So you can't just simply push the pin out. It won't come all the way out. Well, that's funny, it just kind of started to, but then it hangs up and gets bound up. And then you have to push the tool in, hit the release. It's really a pain in the rear, and then you can take your pin out. Why that was like that, super civilian, we don't know, but thankfully that feature, I'm not doing air quotes right now, but I really want to, that feature has been removed, thankfully. I hated those pins. So moving forward, we still have the exact same retaining pin for the recoil spring and buffer. Looks like the trigger groups are pretty much the same. Now, from that point, things change significantly. So we have inside here, which is really interesting. Both rifles have this. But you'll notice something in here you won't see on your a standard AR-15 generally, and that's the silver plate down in here. And what it does is when the hammer comes back under recoil, that hammer impacts that plate versus impacting the trigger group itself and causing damage. Why do they do that? Both rifles have this. You'll see these types of plates put into the guns for a reason. Why does this have it and your M4 doesn't, or your A4 or whatever AR-15 you have? That's because this is a gas piston gun. In gas piston guns, the bolt carrier velocities can be higher. And when the bolt carrier velocity is higher, it hits that hammer with more force, drives it back, causes trigger slap, causes damage to the trigger mechanism. This is why early MCXs, you couldn't put aftermarket triggers in them except very specific ones because they would batter the trigger into pieces. And this would be no different. So it has that stop plate in there for the hammer to impact, and none of that energy gets transferred into trigger slap, and it doesn't damage the internal components of the rifle. You'll notice they had ambi controls on the original, but you'll notice it was more conventional. Now, even though it has a different control selector lever, you can still put it on safe after the hammer's been put at the rest position, and you can cock the weapon with it on safe. That's something you won't find in a standard M4, but that's been a feature of the MR series, and it has maintained that feature going forward. So the hammer's at rest, and I can still put it on safe, but you'll notice now it's a quarter turn, right? So it's a short throw safety lever, and the levers have been reprofiled. And it's a nice touch. I do like the shorter throw levers. Moving forward, this looks very similar to a product that we've seen in the past. This is called the PDQ. And you can actually put a similar product. If you look up PDQ, you can cut your own receiver and put an ambi mag catch in your rifle like this. I saw this many years ago at a Gunriders event, and I've since seen them showing up elsewhere in the industry, but that's what that looks like. Looks very much like a PDQ. Have a standard AR-15 style mag release over here and standard fencing. This area hasn't changed much, but the mag well profile has changed. So you will notice on the A1, it's more square cut. You'll notice this is more angular. So the front of it has been taken up, taking some material off, adding some material over on the other areas of the receiver for fencing to keep buttons from accidentally being hit. And so I don't know if that's a total weight savings or if that was so they could put, a little additions elsewhere and keep about the same weight, but that is definitely a different profile. So over here on this side, this is where we get into our ambi controls, which of course the A1 is completely missing. This is more conventional in nature. So the ping pong paddle is enlarged, and then we have our mag release right below that. And then over on the other side, of course, we have our bolt stop bolt release we can use our index finger for here, and our standard magazine release. All right, then moving forward, again, the pins on these no longer have those stupid safeties on them. No tools required, they just move across freely as they should. The A1, you'll notice it has a more conventional trigger guard arrangement, which has a winter trigger in it, so a tip of a bullet can be used to push the plunger down. You can swing this down. This is intended to be used with a mitten, Arctic warfare type situation where you're not using a gloved hand, but instead a cold weather mitten, and you can still access your trigger that way. So that's the cold weather trigger guard that has been removed from the new rifle. And I guess mittens are no longer popular in 2024 as we go into 25. And so just larger, instead of having this flat going across straight trigger guard, you have this larger bulbous one that allows a large gloved finger to get in there. So it'll work with gloves, obviously. Mittens will present a bit more of a challenge. Let's try some Fiocchi 77 grain match. It's only 77 grain we could find out here. Just do 3 rounds of this will give us an idea what it's capable of. Wow. That stuff shoots really good. This gun's definitely better, capable of better than a minute with the right ammo. So I believe back in the day when the MR556A1 came out, HK told us the reason they wanted a bull barrel or a heavy barrel on it was it would improve accuracy for the civilian world. Interesting, because somehow the A4 with its lighter profile barrel gives us about the same accuracy as we saw out of the original MR556A1. So using a mixture of Federal gold medal match and some 77 grain Fiocchi, we got some different group sizes here. So we were getting the gun zeroed on the big paper. First 5-shot group we fired. Did not record this one. We were just confirming 0, and that's 0.97, just under an inch, center to center. And that was Federal. Don't remember the bullet weight. Probably 69. We had a few 77s. I think this was the Federal 77 here. I could be getting this wrong, but it's a 3-shot group, and it measures 0.52 of an inch, so ½ inch. This was a 69 grain stuff. These, we used the cardboard, so this was from a previous group. That's why they're X'd out. The 5 shots we fired, 0.9 of an inch, so sub MOA. This is with the 69 grain Federal. This is the 77 grain Fiocchi, 3 shots, 0.35 of an inch, center to center. So the gun is definitely capable of very good accuracy. And yeah, I mean, as far as AR-15s go, you're not going to do much better than that. That's about the best I've seen a .223 with factory ammunition shoot, bolt gun or gas gun. So that's pretty darn good. I would say the accuracy's there. So with all of that being said, what's my take on the MR556A4? Well, I'm glad it's here. I truly am. I like the fact that we can finally get an ambi gun that has some of the updates to it. The original MR556 was neat when it came out, but we all complained about it because the heavy barrel and the goofy pins and just things that just weren't right about it. This rectifies a lot of that, but the price is still very high. So it's well over $3,000. So it's going to be a niche product. This isn't for everybody that wants a new AR-15. This is for collectors. This is for people that don't mind spending over $3,000 on a go-to rifle. The parts commonality between this and a standard AR-15 in the United States, you're going to have some conflict there, right? A lot of the parts in this thing are proprietary to the gun. So if you're looking for a go-to-war type rifle, self-defense type rifle, even a gun that you want to shoot in matches, you're probably better served by something else. This is going to be more expensive and parts are going to be harder to find. With all that being said, I love it. I think it's about time HK gave us this. Now maybe we can get a proper 243/G36 semi-automatic now, because HK has moved manufacturing, a large chunk of it, to the United States. I should mention that this gun is a mix between US produced parts and German manufactured parts. And from what I understand from press releases is that HK is going to be upping the ante with manufacturing here in the United States. Who knows? Maybe we'll see a semi-automatic MP7 in the future. We don't know. It seems like HK is finally starting to focus on the civilian market and bring us the products that we want. We're sick of the SL8s and the USCs and all the other goofy stuff you've dumped on us. We bought it, we've converted it, but we just want factory guns. And this A4 scratches that itch. If you guys have any questions about anything you've seen in today's video, I try to stick around for the first couple of days after a video goes live to answer any questions you guys may have. Also, right here on YouTube, you got, underneath the video player you're watching right now, you got the subscribe and join button. You can hit either one of those buttons and support us right here on YouTube in the age of demonetization, or you can swing over to Patreon, where you'll get early access to videos, direct access to me, and all sorts of other perks. That link is in the video description below. Please swing by, check out Copper Custom. Thank you for 16 years of support. We'll talk to you guys soon.